Great. Welcome, everyone. I'm Emily McClellan. I'll be your moderator for today, and I'm thrilled to be joined by a fantastic panel. And we're going to discuss how generative AI can drive learner engagement, program efficiency, and ROI. And so, as I'm sure everyone knows, Gen AI has been primarily used for content creation over the past 2 years, but its potential extends way far beyond that. So today, you're going to hear from the people behind the products and also the people using the products to determine how to leverage Gen AI and how to implement strategies for incorporating AI effectively. So before we dive in, let me briefly introduce our panelists. And what I love about this group is we have people who are representing probably what so many of you are experiencing right now. So we have Kareen, who's a product leader and strategist focusing on AI and data solutions, specifically for learning and skills. And her past professional highlights have included leading product teams at lynda.com, now known as LinkedIn, D2L, Degreed, and Wiley. And she's currently CEO of Isano and continues to consult with organizations large and small on skills, data, and AI innovation. Kareen has a lot of early AI products in the works and has a new book that's published by ATD coming out in 2025 on how organizations can transform to become skills-based. So Kareen is going to be our product perspective today. And then we have Debbie Smith, who's an early adopter of AI and customer ed, and she's tried it all. So Debbie is currently the Senior Director of Vizier University. She's the president of SEDMA. She's a moderator on the customereducation.org community and serves on several customer advisory boards. So she's contributed to 2 books, multiple podcasts and webinars, and is a frequent speaker at industry conferences. So not busy at all, Debbie. And then we have Jessica Pear and Kristen Mize from Invirus. And they're in kind of a different boat. So they've been cautiously evaluating AI technology, but are now taking the first steps in integrating it into their programs. So Jessica is the director of Invirus's learning and development team and is responsible for deploying customer engagement, growth, retention, and adoption strategies. And Kristen is the team lead at Invirus's learning and development, leading the learning and development team, where she's responsible for developing the overall learning strategy and maintaining, reporting, and disseminating all course and training information. So thanks everyone for being here, and let's get started. So we want to first ground ourselves in the current state of Gen AI in L&D and also customer ed. And so as AI is rapidly evolving, keeping up with the trends is essential, but there's a lot of voices out there, a lot of things that we're hearing, tons and tons of products. So Kareen, I'll start with you since your role requires you to essentially create these trends. What have you been seeing? What's been the most significant to you, and how have they influenced your approach to building AI technology?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of energy around looking at the current function of L&D and how to make current function more efficient. So we've seen a lot of investment and interest in the content side of content development. I was just at DevLearn last week, so I tried to do like a quick assessment of how many vendors were, every vendor was talking about AI, um, but there was a lot of kind of focus on the content side, video, AI generated video, content. I'm seeing less so far early day. Oh, and a lot of AI coaches. And what that means for different folks is kind of slightly different. But I think a lot of the discussion at DevLearn, and as I've been talking to customers, is less around how to build a faster horse. It's more about how to think about what the future looks like in an AI enabled world. So thinking about really meaningful metrics. I was interested in the poll. Operational efficiency clearly is still important. But certainly, I think a lot of the conversation is around what's next in terms of what can we do with AI that we haven't been able to do before from a technology and product perspective. And a lot of that, I think, will lead us into more interactive personalized adaptive learning type of experiences where we can really achieve more hyper personalization based on data and AI's ability to create those custom interactions.
Well, that's good because that's definitely what we're going to be talking about today. Anyone else, from more of the practitioner perspective of trends that you're hearing or what you're, in your communities or what your, exec teams are asking you to do?
So from my perspective, I think operational efficiency is really important on the customer education side. We're usually small, lean teams, but the operational efficiency can't be focused just on content development because realistically, yes, we can gain improvements with the content creation, but I think the real advantage of AI is going to be outside of content creation because content creation, you can't create something with Gen AI if you don't already have something to start with. And from a customer education perspective, we're creating things that are brand new. They don't exist anywhere in the world. So the content creation piece isn't as focused for me as Corinne mentioned, the adaptive learning, like being able to get into adaptive learning, using AI agents to actually go through all the support tickets and highlight what's going on in support, going through calls and highlighting what's important to customers and understanding the customer language from both the support tickets and the calls. I think that's really what's going to save a lot of operational efficiency because right now we're having to redo work to actually get it into customer language. So I think that's going to be a huge help.
Great.
I was just going to say, I'll second everything Debbie said. From our perspective, we are also hearing a lot to increase overall efficiency for internal teams and take that information back to see how can we reduce support tickets, how can we see what customers are needing, how can we see the topics that they also need, and then we're able to roll that into putting that into customer education and putting that into more customer engagement. So from our side, I think it is more outside of content creation, more so inside of operational efficiency gains and learner adaptations.
Great. And that definitely brings me to my next question. We hear a lot of buzzwords. Corinne, you mentioned, an AI coach, and we hear about personalization and feedback. We included them in our webinar description. So, but in talking to you all, I've really learned that those words mean very different things to different people. And so how would you define personalization and feedback when it comes to generative AI? And after we do define that as a group, I would love to understand how these definitions are shaping the way that you develop, Corinne, or implement AI into your programs for the rest of you.
When it comes to personalization for us at Embarrass, we really look at personalizing the content itself. So if we take a step back and we look at all of our users and our customers, those users cover a vast range of personas and industries. And through direct feedback from working with those users and hearing feedback and seeing what they're looking at, we've really learned that the content needs to be personalized to best fit their individual persona. So what do they do every day? Making sure that the content is adapted for the individual user is quite quickly from our side becoming the most valuable aspect of customer education or L&D. We also think about personalization as a learning journey that the user would take with us from the moment they purchase one of our products or become a user all the way through to renewal and then even potentially expansion. So something we've started to do is we've begun to craft our learning experience to directly tie into the customer journey. That way our content and the customer education center that we have follows that same pathway. That way the user has access to the dedicated content at the specific stage that they should have and at the appropriate time. And the best way we know how to do that as well is through that data. So we would look at data captured from any of our AI tools and operational efficiency tools, and then build that into the overall mechanism.
Totally agree with you, Jessica. Personalization to me, like to you, it's really about the personas. When I first started developing and when I was in ID, we were all about personalization. We were trying to put everyone's first names into something to talk directly to the person, right? And it sounds like a great idea. It's a really bad idea. It might work on internal when you actually have everyone's correct first names, but once you go to customer education and you try to add people's first names, it never comes over correctly for everyone for SSO. And when it's wrong, it's even more detrimental than it is helpful. So that's always something that like I'm really afraid of now is the personalization to that level, but to the persona base and along the customer journey and along the use case and even along the vertical of the customers. That type of personalization is really important. And the feedback piece, we also, when I started out as an ID, feedback was, yes, you got the question right. No, you got the question wrong. And then we started giving a little bit more context. But even when we were given the context, it just wasn't right because it was too generic. So one of the things that we are using Bongo now so that we can actually give personalized feedback to the individual user and tell them what the tone was, what are they missing, and so actual personalized to the individual user is becoming a bigger thing, and I think that's going to really grow.
Oh, Emily, you're muted.
Well, these guys are all from customer ed. You're more of the L&D experience. So just wondering if, the terminology is different for you, same for you.
You were talking to me, Emily. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, so terminology is kind of the same. I think on a product perspective, I think about personalization in two ways. There's the personalization of what do we know about you, that can add context to what we serve up. And then there's the adaptive piece of how can we modify experiences so that you don't have to learn things that you already know, or how can we kind of make sure that the learning experience is as customized to your needs as possible. And I think on the product side, AI can help us with both of those sides. From a personalization perspective, we can get context around your role, length of company, your geographic location, um, depending on the organization, like information about your skills and what's so we can kind of get into some data that we can already start to add more personalized context to what is served up. And that works really well, actually, if you have a base piece of content that you can then say, oh, this piece of content for someone in marketing has this context versus someone in sales or engineering has a different context. And you can start to leverage AI to add that context layer on top of the core content. The adaptive part, though, is the really interesting piece, and that's where I think like feedback comes in, is that AI can start to understand what you're good at and what you're not good at, and can start to lean in on where do we need to focus on specific skills or specific practice areas. And what I need to practice might be different than Kristen, than Jessica, than Debbie. And so knowing that we're all trying to get to a baseline of a skill or capability in an area, but that how each of us gets there from a journey perspective may look different is, I think, a really interesting opportunity for AI to start to really lean on that adaptive piece, which is a little bit different than the contextual, like I'm in sales or marketing side. So I'm starting to see more movement in that direction. It's a hard problem to solve. We've wanted to do it for a long time. We just didn't have the technology to support it. Certainly, I know Bongo is already leaning in that direction, but it's an opportunity, I think, for us to start to think about how do we really optimize someone's time and learning so that they don't have to spend time on things they already know or they can do well.
Yeah, that's great. And we've sort of started talking about it a little bit, but I'd love to dig in a little bit more to the practical applications now. I think the knowing where to start is a challenge for many people. And so can you share a specific use case where AI, and specifically using AI for what we're talking about, personalized learning or providing feedback, has made a tangible impact on your program's goals? And I'll also throw another question in there. Are you using an outside product for that, or is it something that your own organizations have invested to creating your own technology to do that?
So we are at the point where we must customize content across our landscape, just given how fast we've expanded and across so many different personas. For my team in particular, our future state is to really incorporate and use AI and machine learning to suggest new content automatically based on the learner's activity. And there are some tools that we're looking at to incorporate. There's a tool currently inside of our LMS that we use now, Thought Industries, and that will suggest courses to learners based upon what that learner has done, as well as other learners inside of their own persona category in the completion of their content. So that's one way that we are looking to practically apply from a content recommendation engine. We also leverage Bongo inside of our certification courses for direct feedback as well. So more of that custom feedback, which has worked very well for us being able to provide that dedicated feedback. But in terms of other applications, our organization has built their own AI tools in another product that we have outside of my team that's really meant to capture the ability for the end user to ask questions inside of our product and be fed additional answers. And it really allows them to basically create their own environment and their own experiences. So that is one area that we are definitely investing and seeing a lot of success for. So I think it's multiple applications that we are looking at internally right now.
Yeah, and I can kind of expand a little bit more on Jessica's first point about the personalization. I think for us, the biggest thing is putting the right content in front of the learner at the right time. And the question about like how to get started and where to even start looking, these tools are available in the systems that we already have because how quickly technology is advancing. And previously, in order to do recommended content, it was very manual. You had to have some type of input through like an onboarding survey, match that content, be able to say this learner chose this answer, and then we're going to recommend this content to that learner. It was very, very manual. But now, like Jessica mentioned, our providers already rolled out a tool that's integrating AI to make that process so much easier for us.
And I'm looking to get to that recommendation route. The funny thing is I remember using Moodle in 2009 when Moodle was talking about how you could do this back then, right? And it was extremely manual. And for the most part, the process still hasn't changed. And I want to take it a step further. I want to go more than just based on the course. I want to go based on the assessment and based on the specific questions that you get right or wrong. And even with the distractors, which distractors you choose, because then you're truly getting into the personalization of what someone actually knows or what they don't know, and how can we teach them what they're really missing. So that's someplace that I'm really looking for AI to bring us, and I know that it's going to get us there sooner or later, and hopefully it's going to be sooner. We're using Bongo right now as an efficiency play. Prior to using Bongo, we do a storytelling with data course where each student had to do a presentation on their data, and we would have somewhere between 2 and 4 people sitting in to review those presentations. Using Bongo, we're giving those hours back, so we're really have some real efficiency there. And I think we're starting to see a lot more about the agents that are coming. Our company has actually built some agents. So we have a sales agent that we're using right now, and we have agents that we can use in different pieces of our play. But as I look at more agents, you're going to see all types of agents talking to each other. So then how do you dig through which agents you're actually using? So I think it's a fascinating place that we're going.
Yeah, and so what advice would you give someone who is starting to explore it? Or maybe Kareen, somebody who wants to start building at their own organization or look to other products. Where do you start? What are the questions that you ask yourself? All of it.
From a building perspective, a lot of AI is really dependent on data to make it meaningful. And so I think I'm a true product person, so I always start with a problem you're trying to solve and defining the problem, defining what success looks like, understanding the impact that you're trying to have. But once you have defined that piece of like, here's what we're trying to solve for, and here's what success looks like, then it's really about understanding if you're leveraging AI to help support these new models, what data do you have up front that you can leverage to kind of bridge the basic AI pieces. I also just want to say there's kind of two different, I'm talking about LLMs right now a lot. There's different types of AI that I think can be leveraged. So depending on the problem that you're solving and the solution that you're looking for, way back, in the before LLM times, we were already using AI to build intelligence around skills and leveraging machine learning and starting to build out algorithms. So there are ways, and I know Bongo isn't always based on intelligence as well. There are ways that you can leverage AI to start building intelligence internally within organizations around data. But I think really understanding like what information do you already have? How can you inform your AI and get started in the learning process? And then how do you refine that over time? Um, I'm kind of speaking generically because everybody has a different problem to solve to start. And so, like in my mind, getting really clear about what you're trying to accomplish, because any investment in any exploration into AI means you want to see an impact. And in order to measure the impact, you kind of have to know where you're starting from and you have to have a sense of where you want to get to. So.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I've joined, there's so many communities out there, which is wonderful. And there's SEDMA and there's, a bunch of L&D ones. And I've noticed that there's now all these different channels of tech and AI. And so I think if you're not a part of the community that you belong to, definitely find that, because it's a really wonderful group of people who are always willing to share a problem that they have, and then the technology or strategy or process that they're using to solve for that challenge. So I have personally have found that really helpful in finding new technology. All right. So I guess now I really want to talk about, the collaboration between product and actually, implementing and practicing and applying the product into your organization. So, Kareen, would love to hear from you. How do product teams work with customers when they're building their AI products, whether it be before or during or even after development? And can you share any examples of where you've worked successfully with customers? And then also would love to flip it over to the rest of the group to talk about, once you do implement technology, whether it be your own from your own organization or, a third party, how much do you kind of work with that company and find their product team and work with them?
Yeah, I think one, because we're early days with AI, taking a consultative approach with product and working with customer teams is really important. I think um, most organizations are in the midst of defining how they're using AI. Like there's a bunch of legal um, kind of technology cost ramifications, things that we don't typically think about in the design process, but the product folks take think about when they're building. Like AI isn't free, so we have to think about the cost analysis piece, and especially when we're talking about learning interactions. I work on skill data side of things a lot. It is people data. How that people data is being used, kind of the privacy security elements of that are all really important for companies to think about when they're working with a vendor or a product that they're thinking to implement. Where is data going? Who's like, how is it being used? All of those things I think are important implications. It's probably not the sexy side of the AI implementation, but I think to really successfully roll out an AI-based product within an organization to kind of move these use cases forward, those are some of the discussions that we like to have with customers, is how does this AI component fit in? What's the cost structure for how we make sure that we're using it wisely and well. And then I think integrations. One of the things that's true in almost every organization is you already have technologies and tech stacks and things that are working, and now you're introducing a new technology component into that mix. How is data being shared? How does it integrate from a user experience perspective? So how does that flow? How do employees reach this and interact with it? Lots of product considerations as we work with customers to make sure that new AI entering the mix complements and enhances the work that's already been done to set up those tech ecosystems.
And Corinne, I think what you said is so important is that you really listen and work with your customers. I've also seen AI implemented wrong at companies who were trying to get ahead of the game too fast, and they actually didn't talk to their customers. So in the learning space, uh, we all know that you need to write your learning objectives before you create any content. I saw the one system decide to have you upload your pre-created courses, and then they were going to tell you what the learning objectives were. And I was like, okay, well, if someone's using that, they don't know how to design content, right? So it's a bad practice. So as we're developing these AI tools, we need to make sure that we're really incorporating best practices into it. At Visio, we are a people data company. That is what we are. We're people analytics. So understanding the use of people data and how we integrate it into daily life is hugely important to us. And we do have an AI tool like most people do now. Ours is called V, where when you're in Teams, you can actually ask a question. What is my turnover rate? It will only give you the access based on what your permission level is in product, right? So making sure that we're just not opening people data up to everyone. It has to really be permission based for privacy reasons. So really honing in on that is really important.
Yeah, I think that's a great point just about security and privacy in general, is to make sure any AI product that you're using, you're making sure that it is secure and that data is not going to be going out for all the world to see. All right, so we've covered a lot today, and I definitely we have some questions from the audience, so I'd love to take some time to ask those to you all. So this one actually specifically was for Jessica. So you talked about your completion rates. So what are you seeing regarding completion rates for suggested or recommended content?
That's a great question. So currently, we are not yet using the recommendation engine within our LMS. So our recommended content is I would consider it more manual side. So inside of our customer site, you can self-discover what content you need, or our customer success teams will automatically send individual pieces of content. So what we're hoping to get to is to leverage the true recommendation engine that our LMS already provides, and allow that recommendation engine to take a look at that learner's activities and then feed them content from that activity set. So I'm hoping to get there soon in order to test the completion rate specifically for recommended content. But from a manual perspective, we are seeing pretty high completion rates, but we are choosing what we're sending to that end user. So basically sending them their personalized views.
Great. And then Debbie, I think this was a follow-on to what you were just talking about with the learning objectives. Someone suggested that, while you might not want that to be your kind of be all end all, it could be a help to see what learning objectives do get generated to check whether your content is doing what you want it to be doing. So if you're meeting your actual objectives. So I thought that was an interesting comment as well.
Yeah. You can actually do that with ChatGPT right now. I mean, it can pull those all out for you. So building it into a platform when you're publishing the courses is where it doesn't make sense, right? It's the understanding where AI fits in the workflow, because if you implement it like as a quality check would be a great idea, Daniel. Yes. If you implement it at the point that you're already published, that's like that's when it's a problem, right? So really understanding your customers and how they're using your product as you're implementing the AI is really what you need to make sure you're doing.
Great. Okay, some more questions coming in. So what are the learners' challenges in using your AI functionality? What have you seen?
I feel like I can probably speak to that because we had to create a course to onboard our users to our new AI tool. And I think that was a great place to begin, to think of your AI tools that you're creating within your company as a product itself. We had to obviously understand a lot about our audience, knowing that we are really taking it back and teaching what is a prompt, what is an input, what is an output, what is prompt engineering, how do you craft this question in a way that is actually going to yield results that are meaningful and impactful, and not just generic outputs of data. So we really did have to think about that tool as a product itself and onboard our customers by first teaching the value, right? Showing how it's going to change their lives, make their jobs easier, but then also how to actually use it.
Anyone else have feedback from the end user where you've implemented any AI?
I think the biggest concern that I've seen is around the concerns that people have heard, rightfully so, around privacy and data. And my company's not allowed to use AI, or I use a lot of AI tools for generation and for review, and we're bigger on using them for review even than for generation. Um, but I had an ID who actually decided not to work for us anymore because we were using AI. So I think there's still the fear of AI. And so I think that that emotional response to AI is one of the biggest things that I see problems around.
Great. And that actually leads to one of the next questions, which is they're saying, I'm hearing there's so many different AI tools. How do I know which is the best? So Jessica, you talked about how AI is integrated into your LMS. So they're asking for everyone to just drop a list of your top AI tools.
So I use a ton of them. So we use Learn Experts, which is Leah AI, and that's a content development tool where we can take a video in and it will give us a first draft of a course. We can also put documents into it. It creates its own interactives now, and it can do translation. I also use Grammarly. Um, and then I use Hemingway. I'm in love with Hemingway. Anyone who hears me talk knows that I always talk about Hemingway. And it's great for review because you copy and paste your doc in there and it highlights it in colors. So I tell my team all the time, I don't want to see anything that has color in it in Hemingway. We use Bongo for our feedback and grading. I used ChatGPT to create images. One of my IDs had spent 8 hours creating an image for one of the courses she was doing, and she really didn't like it. So we got on a call and I pulled up my ChatGPT and we had an image that was amazing in less than 10 minutes. So I'm using it all around there. And now that I'm starting to learn more about agents, I'm starting to think about and help build out some agents so we can actually do some analysis and pull things from other sources and then embed content into our sources.
Yeah, and I can, some of the similar products and tools that Debbie has used. I know this conversation is not about content design, but of course you cannot ignore the impact that that has had on the industry. High level, the two that we use for content creation is Guide and Well Said. So we use Guide for in-app product tutorials, and we love that because our products change so fast, and our team really struggled before this whole AI revolution to keep up with the speed of which those products were changing. And Guide allows us to be able to go in and change terminology within the product and not having to redo the entire workflow, which has saved our team a lot, as well as with Well Said. So we completely readapted our process for how we design and create content using Well Said. And that is a text to speech option for our video content and materials. It also has languages that can be translated as well. Recently, I become obsessed with Notebook LLM. I heard a podcast and had no idea that it was generated using Notebook LLM, and my mind was blown. played around with it with some of our own data, and it was amazing. I really suggest you just to play with that for fun. And then of course, within our LMS, there are tools that generate images and generate assessment questions, but really it's been Bongo has been the game changer with us as far as video assessments. I didn't get to really talk about this earlier, but we do certification programs that have that have completion-based practical assessments, and we're leveraging Bongo and the AI coach specifically so that we can begin to scale that, because we have reached a point where our program needs to learn how to scale for assessments, and Bongo is kind of the game changer there for us.
Great. No, thanks. I think that's going to be super helpful to everyone. And another follow-on question from that is, what are your use cases, if any, for using AI for content creation? And so this person said, definitely controversial, but interested in hearing thoughts from the group.
I replaced Rise, which was our content development tool, with an AI development tool. And I had to make it, we're at a place where many companies are today that if you get one software, it can only be to replace something else. We're not adding to our software spend. So anything we do, we have to break down the cost of it. So I was able to replace it at a lower cost. And then anytime I want to bring in any other tool, I have to show the amount of hours that it's going to save. So therefore, we can actually pay for it with hours saved. So that's something that I'm really focusing on now.
Great. And we're getting a lot of questions for, can we get the list of everything you just said? So we will put that in the follow-up. I'll reach out to this group and make sure we get everything accounted for and send that in the follow-up, so you have a list of all the tools and resources. And so here's a good one. So with the difficulties around AI just mentioned, pricing, security, integration, etc., what strategies can you recommend to help convince resistant leadership to see the light? Great question.
I always recommend pilots. I think showing smaller examples and being able to show impact goes a long way towards, it also helps you uncover some of the questions and resistance that leaders have. So before most leaders will invest time, resources, etc., into a broader scale solution, being able to show, hey, we've been able to handle this small slice with the solution, and here was the outcome, and then get buy-in to expand, is usually a lot more effective than trying to make the case with no data to back it up. So I think, I think everyone is kind of in the experimentation stage anyway, in terms of trying new technologies, seeing what works, taking on use case by use case. But I think if you've got a particular area or use case that you want to solve for and invest in, thinking about how you can prove that out in a small way and then take that to leadership to kind of just agree to expand rather than to sight unseen say, yes, we're going to invest in this use case, I think is a good approach.
I also think within your own teams, it's treating it like you would evaluate any other product as well. Like, I can't just come to Jessica and say, hey, there's this great new tool. Can we please get it now? Because of course it's shiny and it's pretty and I want it. But we really have to do our job of like fairly evaluating those tools to justify the use case. And so you should have seen our list before we narrowed it down to like our select few. And so that really does involve having those conversations, getting those product demos, and being able to justify the cost if it's going to help your team.
Yeah, the cost justification is the biggest piece. There's a lot of tools out there that I'd really love to use, but realistically, I can't justify using them, even though they're cool. Yes, they'd save my team time, but they wouldn't save enough time for me to actually buy it or use it. So that's the thing that I have to trade off and figure out. So the suggestion on pilots is really a great one. Without doing a pilot to actually document internal usage and how it actually saved time. Because we've all seen ads from companies who say, oh, you can create courses in minutes now instead of in days. Well, in customer education, we can't create them in days even. It takes us weeks. And, I've got it down to 4 weeks and I'm really happy with that. But my boss is like, oh, I just read that you can actually do that in minutes and you don't need weeks to do it. Why is it taking you so long? So balancing these conversations is also an interesting part of my day every day.
Those are great great suggestions. And yeah, I would say even with the pilot, when you're working with that team to make sure that you're outlining from the get-go what success means to you, what a positive outcome would be, so that both groups are really tracking that along the way to make sure you're reaching the goals or not reaching them, to make your decision easier. All right. So, okay, another one. Do you see AI replacing actual humans in the workplace?
So there's a problem with it. And there was a research study, and I can't remember who did it. I have it on my computer somewhere, where it looked at the AI development of a course, the human development of a course, or the combination. And the combination was found to be much better. And I think that's always going to be the way it works. AI hallucinates, and it hallucinates in ways that we don't even recognize it. And I've seen this in feedback actually through one of the note taker apps, where people will take it, put it into an interview, and you get feedback from the interview saying that you did a great job, but then you don't make it on. AI has a situation with some of the generative AI where it's overly positive. It wants to make you feel good, and you do, but it's not always accurate. There's also problems in reading language, that there are nuances and inferences that humans draw that AI just can't draw yet. At the point that uh, it's actually replacing humans, we're going to have a real problem, because that means we're going to end up with a split society, people who are knowledgeable and people who don't even think, it's sort of a dystopian type society. So I don't think we're ever going to allow that to happen, quite honestly. Let's let that stay in the books. I think it's going to help us grow and it's going to help society, but I don't think it's actually going to replace.
I have a hot take. I think it is going to replace people. And I think from a skills perspective, because I've been tracking skills and patterns of skills in the workplace over the last 10 years, there are jobs that will go away. There are roles that will go away. There are capabilities that we are using human powered intelligence for today that we won't need to in the future. I think the things to reconcile, to your point, Debbie, there's a lot of challenges with AI today, but some of those will get resolved over time, as the mechanisms get smarter. So I think it's really going back to what you said. I think it's the question of what does the collaboration look like between the technology and the people. And I do think that that means that some humans will be replaced, but hopefully that also means that new jobs are being created that are allowing us to use what's uniquely human, in collaboration with technology. I mean, um, we've already seen disruption in some industries where AI has, I'll pick on the financial industry, where financial analysts are basically gone now because they're using AI algorithms to identify trends in the market, et cetera. But now data privacy security roles are a really big need in that area. And so people are just moving into different roles. And I think those are the trends to watch. And especially, I mean, again, I was at DevLearn last week, so lots of conversation around the future of L&D and how AI is going to factor into our jobs and roles. Um, I think there's an opportunity for us to kind of rethink our strategic role in bringing value to the organization. And if a lot of the tactical work is able to be done by AI, how do we actually evolve to be more strategic and really driving business impact? I think it's going to be an interesting time for us. Maybe that wasn't exactly replacing humans, but I think certainly our jobs today will not be the same 5 years from now.
Totally, totally agree with you. I don't see it as replacing. I see it as changing, because
Yeah,
even, when I was teaching in 2000, the kids graduating then were going into jobs 4 years later that didn't exist, right?
yeah,
So we had
for
the
sure.
thing, you couldn't use a calculator on a test when I was in high school, right? Because that was bad. So these things have changed. So I don't think it's replacing. I think it's really changing our jobs. I think people are actually afraid of totally being replaced, and at a SEDMA conference 2 years ago, one of the attendees is like, oh, we won't have to work more than 5 hours a week anymore because we'll never have to work because AI is going to replace us. So like that's a replacement. I think this is a change, and I do agree with what you're saying. Our jobs are all going to change, and we all need to grow with those.
I'll kind of end on this note too, kind of echoing what both Debbie and Corinne said, is like, I view myself as ensuring I don't get replaced by knowing AI. I feel like the only way I can stay up to speed is ensuring that I am well versed on these tools. I know how to implement them. I understand the intricacies of the resistance towards them, but at the end of the day, like my proficiency in the tool really does maybe ensure that hopefully I'm not replaceable.
Yeah, and I think, you all have already, numbers and stats that you can say that, by implementing AI, you were able to, create these courses faster, maybe, or grade the students quicker, or whatever the case may be. So I think that there's great opportunities with data and tracking that data to show how you're being more effective by using AI. All right. So let's see. So yeah, well, that one of the next questions is what does success look like when using AI tools? And how are you tracking that success?
For me, it's about efficiency and allowing us to do higher level things and do the more important work. That we don't need to do a lot of the lower level work that we were doing and we were spending a lot of time doing. And even looking at like AI agents, how can we use AI agents? I can remember at one company, I spent about 3 days digging through support tickets, literally 3 days going through them, classifying, trying to understand, figuring out what was going on. Now I can send an AI agent to actually do that for me and come out with and summarize what are the keywords, what are the biggest focal points. So all of the tools that we're implementing are really about human efficiency, that so human can do the more important work.
That's super similar for us from our success metrics as well as operational efficiency. We have more recently started to implement support agents across products and portions of our websites as well. And reducing the number of support tickets has just been amazing. The percentages that we have seen when implementing these agents now across products. So we're looking to expand that even further. We are actually in the process now of implementing a support agent onto our customer education site for a way to help our customers be even more efficient in finding the training resources that they need, but then also maybe there is a product level question that doesn't necessarily fit within the location that they're at, but now we can efficiently get them where they need to go. So it's not as much about self-discovery and trying to find what you're looking for because you think you know something or you think you know you're in the right spot, but using this agent to much more efficiently give them that answer right away and then get them to the location inside of our company as quickly as possible. So we've seen huge efficiency gains with leveraging support agents specifically.
And then, we've talked about this offline, but I think, quickly just getting your thoughts on the difference between sort of that point of need learning versus kind of more holistic learning and being able to apply things, in your job or so, I know we've mentioned Bongo and I like to think that that's what we do, but would love to get your thoughts on kind of the different types of learning that you're hoping that your end audience is going to receive.
So
Yeah, sorry.
go ahead, Corinne.
I was gonna say, I think one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about Bongo is that it allows organizations to give feedback at scale. I think one thing that's particularly hard is to, in groups that are customer facing, in groups that like where soft skills are particularly important or validating product knowledge is important, to be able to do that in a consistent way at scale is often really hard. I'm super excited about the potential for being able to give leaders feedback on leadership skills. It's an area that most organizations struggle with, because once you move into a leadership role, who observes you the most as a leader are usually your team, and they're not probably going to be super candid with you in giving feedback. And then your peers and like leaders above you often don't see you in the day-to-day interactions and how you work. It's kind of the nature of moving into those roles. With tools like Bongo, where we can actually allow people to practice, give them feedback, suddenly we're going to have the opportunity to help build skills and give insights in ways that we were never able to before. That to me is really compelling and interesting, and solves the problem universally in any organization of how do you help your leaders develop their skills. So it's those types of use cases where I think AI certainly is going to help us scale like feedback and things where we used to have like human interaction and human touch points. Now we can start to build systems and AI feedback mechanisms to help scale some of those things that were hard to do before. I think it's why AI coaches have taken off as like an initial like crunch, because everyone was like, of course I need a coach. I want a coach. How relevant that is, how meaningful it is in context, it probably varies by the coach. But I think what's compelling about Bongo specifically is its ability to kind of provide that feedback loop against real meaningful interaction and a context that you can be evaluated against.
Yeah, I agree. The Bongo really helps with the learning, right? And uh, we're seeing and I'm hearing people say that, oh, you don't need to learn anymore, right? Because you have everything that right at your fingertips. And that's actually what's being said, right? And when they're saying you don't need an LMS, they're saying you don't need an LMS because all you need is just-in-time training. Well, just-in-time training is performance support. So that's the support to execute on the task that you're doing at the moment. But it's not the deep knowledge that you need in order to repeat the behavior, because it's just popping up just as you need it. So I think there's a use case for both. And I think, the end product support is really that performance support. The learning and the educating that we do with tools like Bongo is that deeper learning that we need. And there's definitely a need for both. What we need to be clear about as people in the learning field, both in customer education, sales enablement, and learning development, is we need to be able to explain those differences to leaders so that they understand that, yes, there is a need for all of it. And it's not a one or the other, it's a combination of everything that actually will help elevate your workforce.
Yeah, no, that's great. All right, well, we have 4 minutes to spare, so I think we should start wrapping up. Thank you everyone for all of the questions. Thank you to all of our panelists for sharing all your insights. Really helpful. I learned a lot. I hope everyone did. So for everyone who joined, just be on the lookout for an email from Bongo. It's going to include the webinar recording, a white paper on how AI can go beyond content creation and quizzes, a case study that you can look into, and also the list of tools that everyone mentioned today. So if you're interested in experiencing, what Bongo is, or exploring any of these topics further, just please feel free to reach out to me, or you can find our panelists on LinkedIn as well. So we look forward to seeing you at our next event. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes.
Bye.